No. It's 1.21 gigawatts. 1.21 gigawatts. Just only a bolt of lightning, right? Right. Hey, everybody, what if you could go back in time and give your younger self a little bit of a piece of advice? Hey, everybody, it's Ed the Trainer. And without getting too heavy, not talking about the Earth's gravitational pull, but without getting too heavy, we'll talk about that next on this week's Tips on Tuesday. So over the last few weeks, many of you, probably like me and my kids, have partaken in a lot of the reruns that have been running constantly on TBS of the Back to the Future series. And of course, my kids are a little bit younger, so they're very intrigued as to exactly how that story plays out. But one thing that ran through my mind as we watched the first story, the second story, the third in the trilogy kind of play itself out is, what if we, in ourselves today, knowing what we know, what if we were able to go back in time or forward in time or bounce back and forth and give ourselves a little bit of advice to try to help eliminate or avoid some of the pitfalls that we've fallen into in life? And Marty, trying the best that he could, wound up tripping over himself, even though he had the benefit of knowledge of the future. Every time he'd fix something, he'd break something else. And it seems like in regular life, a lot of times what we do is continually break things. These are just mistakes. These are things in life that we're moving our way through and hopefully learning as we go. But the question again, in the lead-in, is what if you could go back 20 years, 15 years, 10 years? I know there's some of you that when I say 20, 25 years, you're thinking, well, I don't know what kind of advice I'd be able to hear or understand back then. But what if you could go back to a certain point in your life and give yourself advice with the benefit of the knowledge that you have today? What advice would you give to yourself? And in watching those movies alongside my kids over and over again the last few weeks, asking that question really made me realize, the advice I might give myself as a 20-year-old might be the same advice that I would give myself as a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old, and so on. And when I ask of you, what advice would you give yourself as the younger you, whether it's 20, 25, 30, or whatever age you chose to go back, my question really is, would you take it? Would you act on the advice that you gave yourself? I mean, certainly you trust coming from you that it would be good advice, but realize that the biggest disconnect that any of us struggle with is knowing what we should do versus actually doing it. And so what I would tell you is today, in this exercise that I just brought up, and knowing you could go back and tell yourself in time some advice to help you move along or get along a little better, I might submit to you that that's the same advice you could probably follow today. We all probably could. The secret, though, is to act on the advice. Act, period, and move forward on the things that we're looking to achieve, right? Let's be honest with each other. How many of us knew 5 years ago, 10 years ago, of some things that could help us to achieve, whether they're smaller goals or longer term goals, and still today we're giving ourselves the same advice, maybe kicking ourselves for not taking action? So this week, let's think about this. We know what we should do, what action we should take. Let's take some small steps this week to move on those ideas, on that advice. And let's move forward somehow, some way, in something that maybe for the last 5, 10, 15 years, you've always known you were capable of doing. You've just not made the steps. Remember, the biggest key to doing is starting. Thanks for spending a couple of minutes with me today, everybody. I really, really appreciate your time. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you soon.